Hey, what's up, guys? Green Greninja here again, back with another Advance Wars story unit review. And this time, we're bringing you an old classic, an OG super-powered unit. Well, it's the Neotank, you know? Alright, look, I'm playing at Sturm, it's the Neotank. Very funny. Yeah, this thing's a behemoth. We all know it, we all love it. 1 vision range, 6 move, a terror to anything on land, even some ships. Get really hurt by these things, and the Neo Cannon, it's insane. However, the machine guns can only fire on the air units, so they don't do that much. Like, they don't do crazy amounts to air units, and only the copters at that. But yeah, their cannons are the real selling point. Whatever their cannons can hit, they can devastate. So, without further ado, let's see all of the changes that the Neotank has had in Advance Wars Story, the romhack. So this is a romhack made by Platinum Skink. It is an amazing balance change. It has, well, okay, so this romhack has an amazing amount of balance changes, which it brings to the Advance Wars 2 meta. And, alright, let's see. If I move this off of this base, whoa, easy now. So yeah, the Neotanks have been price nerfed a little bit down to 24,000 funds. So that is an increase in 2,000 funds. We will see in the stats of the Neotank, which we will show off in just a moment, just what that can do. So, against infantry, the damage is actually increased by, I believe, 10%. So we're getting a little extra firepower, which means we can do a bit of extra damage to infantry in terrain. Now, let me just say before we continue, all damage done here is done without CO powers. Otherwise, Sturm would be doing way more damage with his vehicles. So no CO powers are affecting the damage numbers shown. These are all standard and on roads or zero terrain so that we can just see the damage tables. So, mechs also have a 10% damage, what is it? The Neotanks also have a 10% damage spike on mechs in this ROM hack to justify that price point. Looks like Recons also... Oh no, Recons actually have an extra 30% damage done. Oh, I'm sorry, not extra 10. I'm looking at the wrong thing. I have a damage table pulled up right beside me so we can review these changes here. So yeah, the damage numbers all seem to have increased by 10 thus far from the base Neotank. As well as the damage against tanks. An extra 10% damage here. 115 versus 105 in the base game. Alright, so medium tanks now. Let's see if this takes a turn. Not really. It actually just deals an extra 10% again. So it looks like so far, it's a flat 10% damage increase against all ground units thus far. So medium tanks. Neotanks, their mirror matchup is untouched, it seems. They do pretty much equal damage to themselves, 55 versus 55. So yeah, that's a pretty standard mirror matchup for the Advance Wars heads out there. We have an extra 10% damage to the APC here. So I guess other than the mirror matchup, everything's just looking like it's went up by 10%, which is really nice on roads. Yeah, another clean sweep here, Neotanks. We're going to see a lot of destruction here. Neotanks are good at what they do, which is knocking out anything on the ground. Bam! You gotta love that sound effect, though. And yeah, so so far everything has had just a 10% damage spike, including anti-air right here. Another 10% on 115 equals 125. So that's beautiful. Here, missiles, 135 from 125. So really, what this is doing, even though these are already one-shot, basically, is making it so that terrain like cities and forests are just a little bit less trouble as well as CO powers and CO day-to-days are also going to play less of an impact on how well your Neotanks smash through everything. So now here we come to the new interactions with naval units. So what is it? Destroyers right here are these 8,000 fund, essentially tanks on water, naval units that have direct combat and cannons like a tank. You do 40% to these things, which is considerable. Because, you know, naval units usually don't take quite as much as land units do to the Neo cannons. So let's see how much you take back. So that actually, I would say, is not a very valuable engagement, because this destroyer costs 1/3 the price, and it did 2 damage to you. So, like, that's, what is it, 3,200 funds? No. That's 4,800 funds that you just lost for attacking this, and you've only dealt about, I don't know, like, yeah, 3,200 funds to this thing. Like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it at all. So I would say this is a losing engagement just by funds. But even if I would only take that kind of engagement if you're sure you can finish off the destroyer, or if you just badly need it chipped, and the Neotank's the only thing you have around. Otherwise, that was a pretty bad engagement. Now, against cruisers, this is a safe engagement here, 60%. Your Neotank should probably be doing other things than hitting cruisers, but if you can, you'll definitely take a big bite out of that cruiser. Submarine's another safe engagement, but you're not going to do that much to an unsubmerged sub here. 25%. I believe that is... Let me see. That is actually up 10%, though, so, again, a buff. And actually, the one against cruisers, let me just check if that was a buff as well. I'm pretty sure it was. Yes, it was a 10% buff. So yeah, it looks like the balance change is just a flat 10% damage increase. Against landers, it is looking like actually a 15% damage increase, because that was a 50 if I'm not mistaken. Correct me in the comments below, of course, if I mess up, because I will mess up. This guide is... I'm trying to make this friendly for you, but if I mess up, hey, don't hit me too hard, alright? I'm trying here. Neotanks against battleships, 25%. I believe that's up from 15%. No, it's actually up from 10%, so that is a 15 damage buff. That is quite substantial against a unit quite as expensive as a battleship. Again, I think your Neotanks probably have better things to do, but if you need to take out a battleship that is on the shore, go right ahead. That's not bad. And against the Dreadnought, 15%. This is another new unit, quite like the Destroyer in many ways, except its cannons are far more powerful and its armor far more fearsome. So, Neotanks actually are going to have a super bad losing engagement here. You should not be taking that ever. And ignore the fact that they look like artillery. Again, the animations don't quite sync up. I bet it's really hard to program that into a romhack, though, so I'm not going to dwell on it. And now, yeah, we'll see how the Neotanks do against the copters. 65% damage to a transport. And let me see, that is up from 55, so another 10% damage increase. And to B-copters, we're doing 32%, which is up from 22. So yeah, another 10% increase. Not too bad, but you do end up taking a little bit of flak back from battlecopters, which is, I'd say, a little worse, since the cost of the Neotank went up. So I would keep that in mind when you need to weaken battlecopters. That Neotanks, maybe not what you want to be sacking into it. I would sack infantry into it before you start sacking things like Neotanks into battlecopters. Now, that is them on the offense. We can come here to the practical applications. Here we have some little scenarios set up with Neotanks all around. We can, yeah, so that's the price of them. But here we have a whole bunch of units on terrain, which we can investigate here. So Neotanks, the buff Neotanks are going to do like 50 to cruisers on reefs. Quite substantial. It's going to take a little bit back, but you know, whatever. You're doing big damage there. To a tank on a city, 80%. Nothing to scoff at. You're basically wiping out that tank for free, even though it's on a 3 defense star property. Neotanks, again, battlecopters, 32% engagement. Not the first thing I would do with it, but, you know, if need be, can be done. We have, let's see, against a medium tank here, we do 76 on a plane. That's a very valuable engagement. You love to see it. Neotanks against artillery on forests, straight up one shot. You know, the firepower buff there demonstrates itself quite plainly there. You know, you love to see just a flat increase, a guaranteed one shot on a forest. Great stuff. And here we see anti-air, same thing. Damage numbers pan out in its favor for a one shot. Beautiful. So yeah, against these naval units, again, we already saw those, but if you wanted to see that, here we can see against a mech on a mountain, you're doing 75 with those machine guns. Nothing to scoff at. And again, you're taking like nothing back since we're on a property, but yeah. Impressive numbers. To a, what is that, missiles on a city, you're doing like 94. And to the medium tank, you're doing like 60 on a property. And you take a little back, even though you're on the HQ, but you know. But yeah, so now we're going to actually swap over, and we're going to see how the Neotank does on defense. Now, this might actually be where the damage numbers are quite changed, because I think they buffed the Neotank's armor by at least a bit to these balance changes. So we have a 1% here on Neotank. Let me see my own list. I think that, yeah, that's basically unchanged. Of course, it's unchanged. You know, infantry should probably take effective engagements against that, and you're going to get completely wiped out on the counter. Mechs. Let us see. You're going to take 25, actually. I think that is different, if I have to say. Let me see. Yeah, mechs actually do more to Neotanks now than they used to. That's kind of crazy. I won't lie. That is actually kind of crazy. So mechs are extremely cost-effective against Neotanks. You're basically doing 3 times as much damage as you spent for that mech, which is insane. So again, that's crazy. That's a good engagement. I recommend using your mechs on Neotanks if you need to weaken them. They do great. Again, mechs are not perfect. They're slow. They can get picked off quite easy. But if they get that shot, that's not bad. That's value. Again, recons, they tickle the Neotank. They really don't do anything. I think that's unchanged as well. Tanks in the base game do 15%. They also are actually buffed slightly against Neotanks. So actually, this is kind of a nerf to Neotanks, I'd say, so far in the defensive department. They have been either unchanged or things can do more to them. Here, the medium tank is actually exactly the same as in the base game, 55% to Neotanks. So their armor here is unchanged. The mirror matchup again is completely the same, 55 to 55. Here we have the artillery, and we do 30% to a Neotank on a road. I think that is actually quite different. So, Neotank defending on artillery. Yes, so actually this is where the buffs start to kick in. The Neotank is now 10% more resilient against artillery, and by that I mean a flat 10% damage reduction, which is really, really good. So you're actually taking 33% less from artillery than in the base game, which is extremely good. So that means that artillery are less of a direct counter to big vehicles like Neotanks. The rockets, we have 50%, so they do 30. Another 10% damage increase, they now do 25% less damage to Neotanks. And by that I mean, yeah, a flat 10% decrease though. So that is quite substantial. Your indirects are now going to do a lot less to Neotanks. Anti-air, 1%, not great. I don't recommend throwing your anti-air at Neotanks. It's not going to go well. which has been actually changed from 5% to 1%. So anti-air now do way less. But again, you still shouldn't be throwing your anti-air at Neotanks regardless. You're just going to get blown right up. Battlecopters do far less, I'm pretty sure. I remember that doing way more. Let me check that engagement. Yeah, that used to do 20%. Now that's down to 10. That's half. Half damage from battlecopters. 10% decrease. That is insane. So battlecopters are now, I would say, a pretty bad answer to Neotanks. They just don't do a lot, and they take a lot more. Now knowing this, I'd actually say the battlecopter matchup is actually quite in your favor as a Neotank. So, take that for what you will. Battlecopters are no longer a great answer against heavy, stuff like that. And bombers actually do 65 on roads, which I'm pretty sure is a severe nerf. Yeah, so that's down from 90. So bombers actually did, to be fair, have a decreased price point in this game, if we were to look. Yeah, they are 17 instead of 22k. So I'd say that's a nerf to bombers to justify their price point being lower. But that is quite substantial. The Neotank now survives bomber strikes with some HP to spare. And on terrain, that's even more HP to spare. So here now we come to the new naval unit, the Destroyer. Let's see how much. It does 35% to a Neotank. And for a unit with 1/3 of the price, that's actually quite good. You're earning yourself in. If you hit this Neotank and you get lucky like this, you're actually more than earning yourself in. So that is a valuable engagement. And you're taking like nothing back. So, Destroyer actually matches up quite well against Neotanks. Your cruisers, you really don't want to be sacking your cruiser into a Neotank. You're going to get blown up on the counter, like we just saw right here. You're going to get blown up on the counter. That's just a bad engagement. Battleships are going to do 35, and that is, I believe, down from 50. Yeah. So, battleships are now 15% less effective. That's a substantial armor buff. So if we're going to be looking at the stats of the Neotank, we can really conclude that indirects are far less effective and battlecopters are far less effective. But direct combat is actually been buffed against the Neotank. So the Neotank is weaker against direct combat and is now stronger against indirect fire and can resist it far more easily. The last unit I want to show the Neotank's defense against is the Dreadnought, which is the king of the sea. If you see a Dreadnought coming up to your Neotank, you're in a pretty bad spot. Ignore the fact that the animation looks like artillery and glitches the screen out. It's just a visual bug. But there you have it. The Dreadnought is a big counter to Neotanks. It will absolutely demolish them. And it is worth 25,000, so I guess that makes sense. But yeah, the Neotank wants no business with Dreadnought. Keep them away from the shores when the Dreadnoughts are at play. And I believe that is all I really had to show. Hope you liked this. The Neotank has received some, I'd say, minor buffs on the offensive side. Definitely some much appreciated firepower bonuses, but also some interesting tweaks on the defense. Weaker against direct combat, stronger against indirect combat, and stronger against the battlecopter in the air and the bomber in the air too. So actually, I would say this buff is actually quite good on the defensive side. Makes Neotanks actually feel like a tier above the medium tank in terms of defenses. So that's really nice. So Neotanks are now definitely set aside for medium tanks in this ROM hack. All right. Well, if you like this ROM hack and you like the commentary over my analysis of this unit, please leave a like and maybe subscribe for more content to come. I'm losing my voice. I'm going to try to wrap this up right now. So I hope you all enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe for more, and I will see you later, folks. I'm out of here.